Good morning, everyone. We are ready to get started with our next session. And for that, we have Ms. Patrice Taylor, who is going to be facilitating this session for us. Patrice Taylor is an HR consultant. She's a transformational leadership coach. She's a corporate trainer, speaker, and she is somebody who has been with us before. And so I think all of us within this realm knows her very well. And so at this time, I am going to call on Ms. Patrice Taylor, who is going to present to us on her topic, and she'll tell us more about that when she comes. So come on over, Patrice.
Good morning, all. Good morning, all. Good morning, all. I hope everyone is doing well today. Yesterday, I was the boot camp speaker, and they brought me on. I was the last speaker. And my fear was, oh, wow, it's late in the day. People have had a long day. It was a rainy day. I'm sure nobody's going to be paying attention. You ask them how it turned out yesterday, and they'll be the judge. This morning, it's early. So I have no excuses. No excuses for you. I'm just going to bring what I have for you. So, what I want from you, though, is feel free to take some notes. Feel free to expect to be changed in some way. Feel free to expect that there's something that you're going to be able to take with you that will transform you, first of all, that will transform the people that you work with, that will transform your organization, and of course, that will transform the industry that we're in. So let's get into this. My topic today is strategic talent acquisition, development, and leverage. Strategic talent acquisition, development, and leverage. I need the clicker. And before we even talk about that, I think it's important to understand that nothing happens without a strategy. There must be a strategy in place for results to happen. And so as I thought about this topic, I said, well, I think strategy needs to be broken up into two areas. The first of which is an external strategy. In order for us to focus on acquiring the workforce that we need, we have to think about strategy. And the external strategy is where I believe we should begin. Stephen Covey, that's who comes to mind. He talks about beginning with the end in mind. What is it that we want to achieve at the end of the day? So the external strategy is the first step. Okay? Now, of course, our external strategy has to be connected with our mission, with the vision of the organization, and then we come up with our organizational strategy. And of course, every unit of the organization then has to have a strategy that aligns with the organizational strategy, right? So I looked up what are the 5 key areas that are going to be important in the financial sector in the years to come. The first one that came up was regulatory and compliance knowledge. In fact, that's where we are right now, right? Key areas like AML, KYC. These are all terms that we're all familiar with, right? I'm coming from a private banking background as well. So these are terms that we're all familiar with. But again, we're starting with the end in mind, because before we understand what our acquisition strategy looks like, we need to know where we're going, what we need, what we as the organization needs, right? The second thing I found out was that risk management and financial analysis is going to be core will continue to be core, because it is now, as we progress through the industry in the years to come. Risk identification, assessment, and mitigation. Those are the things that are going to be very crucial in the years to come, that will continue to be crucial. According to the World Economic Forum, 76% of banking executives already understand that. They know that cybersecurity and risk are going to be pivotal. The third thing was digital and technological literacy. Artificial intelligence. Yesterday there was a great session on AI. And the buzzword in the room was ChatGPT. And if I asked, like they asked yesterday, how many people use ChatGPT, the hands would shoot up around the room, I'm sure. Right? And these are the things that we can't run from. This is how we have evolved. I was going to say are evolving, but we've evolved. That's where we are. Right? So these are the skills that we're going to have to be chasing as we move along. The fourth thing, of course, is client relationship management. Key areas, of course. Now, we're getting near to something that's near and dear to me, which is emotional intelligence. It's a skill that can be learned. And then I'm going to take it a little further and say, needs to be learned. That's the non-negotiable. It's the non-negotiable. Because our IQ gets us in the door. Our IQ is what we look for. The IQ is what we look for when we think about talent acquisition. But when they join us, it's the EQ or lack thereof that determines whether we're going to retain them. Experts say that IQ accounts for only 20% of business success. And the problem with IQ, yes, I did say the problem. The problem with IQ is it takes us into this mode of task orientation. We focus on our IQ to get the job done, to the detriment of people. We're still talking about acquisition. How do we leverage the people that we bring on board? EQ will be one of the top 5 soft skills needed for leadership in finance by 2025. That's next year. That's next year. So when we talk about EQ, and I have to park here for a minute, when we talk about EQ, it's all about starting with that self-awareness. You know, when you go on the airplane and they say mask yourself, put on your mask in the event of an incident in the air. We have to put the mask on us first. And if I were to ask who are the leaders in the room, I think every hand should go up, because it starts right there with self-leadership. And then the other thing is empathy. As we think about acquisition, as we think about leveraging the talent that we have, there has to be more than an ounce of empathy. Understanding where people are at, putting ourselves in their shoes. Because, see, there can be no acquisition is only one part of the puzzle. Because once we deal with acquisition, retention has to follow. And the last skill of the top 5 is strategic thinking and problem solving. Critical. It's the ability to anticipate what the market changes look like, what the market needs at any point in time. But more than that, how do we craft the solutions to ensure that we drive growth? As I was walking in, I was reminded of the theme of this conference, which is growth and innovation. Growth and innovation. I want to stick a pin in that, because we are in a war for talent. A lot of our young people are not returning, are not coming into the industry. And so when we talk about acquisition, then we must understand what this war for talent looks like. Well, COVID happened. Here we are about 4 years after COVID. COVID happened, and COVID showed us. It showed many people, and remember there was the Great Resignation. It showed many people that there are other options. They started to tap into their own self-awareness and understand that, guess what? I have something else to offer. I don't even need to be bound by a job. Entrepreneurship happened. And in some instances, it was a forced entrepreneurship. My hand shoots up in the air. But that's where we are. So the advancement of small and medium-sized businesses is one of those things that is driving that war for talent. In our country, we also have to understand or kind of delve into what is it that makes it sometimes difficult to get the talent that we need. And even more difficult sometimes to retain that talent. It's so competitive. Stay with me, we're going to walk some more through that. That's where we come to the internal strategy. The internal strategy says, what do people need? What does our team need? See, the external was, right? What do we need as an organization? But the internal strategy now takes you into understanding what your people need. Because we're still talking about acquisition. We're still talking about retention. We're also talking about how do we leverage the talent that comes into the organization. Employee retention then. Every practice, every policy, and of course that overall overarching strategy that we implement, it has to align, they all have to align in order for us to keep the best talent. The best talent. Yes, we can say that we have the number of FTEs that we need. But do we have the best talent? Because the best talent is what the talent war, the war on talent is all about. Everybody wants the best. But there's a key to doing it. And the first is leadership. Leadership. Somebody once said, people don't leave companies, they leave. They leave leadership, they leave bosses. They do. They don't leave companies, they leave leadership. So the winning strategy then, in terms of acquisition, retention, and leveraging, developing and leveraging who we have, starts with leadership. Everything, 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 and this is not cliche, everything rises and falls on leadership. Culture is defined by leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership then is influence. So this is a quote this is a Patrice quote. Leadership has nothing to do with a title. It has everything to do with our ability to influence change in the lives of those that we are privileged to serve and the organizations that we get to serve in. So it has nothing to do with title. You know why titles are important? Titles are important to maintain our hierarchical structures. Titles are important for role definement. Titles are important. They are important. But titles do not define leadership. Prove it. Hitler was quite a leader. Martin Luther King, quite a leader. Let me bring it current. Donald Trump, a leader. Kamala, a leader. Why? Because they are influencing people not only in the United States, they are influencing people all over the world. Right? So leadership has nothing to do with a title. I believe we could agree on that. Are we good with that? Okay. But beyond senior leadership, I'd say beyond senior leadership, the decision makers, we also have to understand who is at the table. See, because if we are bringing people into an organization, we understand that our ability to influence them to stay is the responsibility of everybody in the organization, particularly those with the title, because those are the people to whom others are reporting. And so we have to make sure that, number one, we are on the same page in terms of strategy, but more than that, our values align. There's a level of congruence between what we say and what we do. There's a level playing field in the organization, and that perception by everyone in the organization is real. That they are valued, they are valuable team players, that we communicate to them that they value and they matter. And I started out by talking about how the difference between IQ and EQ. The thing is about IQ is it's high task. It lends itself to being high task. And EQ is that leveling out where we now bring people in. So there was a study that happened many years ago, Professor Finkelstein, actual study that took place. He studied the 51 most egregious company failures, all Fortune 500 companies, but they failed. Kodak was one of them. Why? Because these leaders or former CEOs themselves, in hindsight said, oh, we realized where we made our mistake. We relied too heavily on our IQ. We devalued the people that worked for us. We lost good talent. We closed the door to innovation and growth. And eventually, Kodak was one of those companies that went under because an employee who had a great idea about digital photography was chased out of the room. In order for us to focus on a people strategy which is inclusive, which opens the door to engagement, which fuels innovation, which fuels growth, there must be a level of emotional intelligence, values, people value around the table. So it means then that the responsibility is on leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm using it in the context of Merriam-Webster. Leadership as the title. Leadership then must focus on ensuring that they deal with narcissistic, misogynistic behavior that devalues people. Because if the industry is going to grow, we need to attract good talent and we need to keep them. See, when we hire, we have to be thinking about succession. We have to look for those qualities that lend themselves to leadership. Why? Turnover, everybody knows, we all know, turnover is very expensive. Not to mention what it does to our brand. Very expensive, and it kills a brand. Part of the work that I do is to work with companies that have high turnover rates. And I will say to you that in most, I almost want to say 99% of the instances, it's a leadership problem. And sometimes it's a problem that's not even, most times it's a problem that is not even recognized. Leaders don't recognize that their focus on the profits, which is very important, that's what pays the bills. But when it's lopsided, that's when the problem happens, to the detriment of the people. And so, am I suggesting that leaders have to take that full weight of making sure that the people stay? No. That's where the inner circle comes in. You train that inner circle. You make sure that you provide leadership development training. You make sure that there's a performance management system in place that is robust, that holds people's feet to the fire. You make sure that managers and supervisors are being evaluated for their leadership qualities as well as their technical skills. Because you want to create a stay culture. And part of that is having HR at the table. Not because I'm an HR person, but in the workplace of the future. In fact, in today's workplace, no longer is it good enough for us to have an exco without HR at the table. Remember, there is a war on talent, a war for talent. HR needs to be at the table. Why? Because with an organizational strategy, there must also be a people strategy. HR should be the pulse. HR should be the bridge. And if they're not being the pulse or the bridge, it's time to get some training in there. It's time to look at capacity. Why? Because there's this whole thing about the leadership lid. If the leadership of an organization is at a 7, how high can the rest of the staff go? It's okay for you to answer. People cannot go higher than leadership. People cannot go higher than leadership. So if the organization is at a 7, chances are the rest of the people are going to be somewhere about 5. And so HR needs to have a pulse. Somebody in the organization has to have a pulse. And how do you have a pulse? You need to know your people. You have to know your people. You have to have boots on the ground. I always like to ask this question of my clients, do you have an open door policy? And you know what they always say? Of course I do. I said, how do you know they have an open door? How do your people know you have an open door policy? You know what they say? They always say, well, Patrice, they know they could come and see me. I said, well, that's a great thing. But how about we look at it this way? Your open door policy should be having that door open as an exit for you to make yourself available to them. You know, in relationships, right? If you're always hearing, oh, you know I love you, I don't have to always say it. Come on, y'all. This is an adult room. We know that doesn't work. It's one thing to say it, but they say actions speak louder than words. My old principal, Muriel Enius, I went to St. Anne's, used to say, who you are speaks so clearly, I cannot hear what you say. That has stuck with me for, I won't tell you all how long, because then you'll know how long I've been out of school. But who you are speaks so clearly, I cannot hear what you say. Actions. So this is what, I thought this was very interesting. Rob Kelleher, he has a book called Who's Sinking Your Boat? And a Gallup study was done. And it shows that in every organization, this is the composition in every organization that was studied, globally. And as you look at this, this slide, think about your workplace. Think about your team. Even on every team, this is the composition. So in a boat, you got 35 people, 35% of the people are the ones that are loyal, busting the butts, working hard. And it said that in the middle there's always some 52% of your team or of your staff who row in today, but tomorrow they're not rowing, right? And then we got this dangerous 13% in the back who has their feet over the edge of the boat, who trying to hold the water back so this boat doesn't get to the destination. Why? Well, that 13%, you have to figure out, we have to figure out as leaders who they are, why they're acting the way they're acting, and what we're going to do with them. It's okay to coach people up, but you also need to coach them out. Because it helps them. It helps them. You coach people up, and when they're no longer coachable, you have to coach them out. I'll tell you why. Because that 52% in there, who's sometimes rowing and sometimes not, they're looking back and saying, oh, that looks like a good cozy seat back there. They're getting away with it. They're making what I'm making. They're getting the bonuses I'm getting. Oh, I might as well join them in the back. And then you know what happens to the 35% at the front? They start saying, I'm busting my butt. I'm busting my butt. I'm working hard. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I'm dedicated. I have a good work ethic. Yes, I want to stay here. Yes, I want to do this. But what's the use? I'll take my experience somewhere else. And so we have to have a pulse on who's in the organization and where they're at. Because every person wants to know. Every person on your team wants to know, do you care? Can you help me? And can I trust you? Trust is the foundation for every high-performing culture. Trust is the foundation. But trust doesn't happen without relationship. Trust doesn't happen unless there's a real open-door policy. Once they trust their leaders, employees are more likely to stay longer and even fight through the difficult times because now they feel a loyalty to them. Loyalty is what keeps people to stay, is what makes people stay. Loyalty. So we're going to talk about corporate culture. I love what Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you could have the best strategy, but if you have a toxic culture, strategy stays on the paper. Nothing happens without a strong corporate culture. And according to our 2019 Glassdoor survey, 56% of employees rank a strong workplace culture as more important than a salary. "77% of workers said they would consider a company's culture before applying for a job." Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to get people into your organization? I always remember this question on, I I sometimes teach an international HR certification, and one question, one practice question that always comes up: who is your biggest brand ambassador? And the answer to that: your employees. Your employees. So if the culture is toxic, they're the ones who are going to go outside talking about it. And then you try and understand why talent acquisition becomes a problem. Because what happens to culture is like it rims over. People take it outside, they talk about it. Your culture is your brand. Apple has developed for itself a culture of excellence and productivity. Southwest Airlines, their culture is a people culture. And as a result, it transcends into client relationships. Remember, one of the 5 top skills that we started with was client relationship management. But that comes from a good culture, a strong culture, a people culture that's created within the organization and transcends into the way that you service your clients. The story is told about a young man who, at the front desk of some sort of hotel or something, it's a true story. This gentleman had spent over $100,000 with them taking his staff every year for a retreat, a company retreat. One time, what happened? One of his staff members left a key in the room. And the employee said, well, I'm going to have to charge you $25. He said, but if we go back for the key, we're going to be late. He said, too bad. I'm going to have to charge you $25. The CEO said, but I come here every year. I've already spent $100,000 with this company. The young man said, that's the rule. The CEO said, well, needless to say, that was the last time that I took my team there. Right? But why did the young man feel that he didn't have the authority to bend the rule or to not bend the rule, use his discretion? Because of the culture of that organization. You're not paid to think. Abide by the rule. See, if we're going to grow and innovate, we have to create a culture that lends itself to innovation, that lends itself to growth. By allowing people to innovate, to take on an entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurship is one of the key components, should be one of the key components of any performance-based, any performance appraisal system. You want your people to have a spirit of ownership and entrepreneurship. Because if they say, oh, this is their company, I'll do whatever they say, we know we have an issue with culture. Your culture is your brand. The winning strategy is work-life balance. How do we leverage who we have? Work-life balance. Ensuring that we allow people time to pause. Working people into the ground. That's a recipe for failure. We want our people to work hard. We want them to work hard because they have bought in. If they buy in, they're going to work hard. They're going to go above and beyond. But we have to create the environment for that to happen. The winning strategy, again, is appreciation. 2 words that have gone down in history as life-changing words. Thank you. Thank you. It doesn't always have to cost money. People just need to feel appreciated. When we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need that. We don't want it, we need it. We thrive on it as human beings. That's how we leverage the talent that we have. Growth opportunities. Yes, we might say everybody is responsible for their own growth, but do we have a training budget? When we sit around the table and we strategize about the annual budget, are we carving out some of that for training and development? People stay when they know that there are growth opportunities, particularly, we know the workforce that we are in right now. Baby boomers on the way out, or some of them, most of them are out, right? Gen Xers, again, fading into the sunset. Millennials and our Gen Zs, guess what? By 2030, 70% of the workforce are going to be Gen Zs. I saw someone hold their head like this. That's our reality. That is our reality. They're here, and they are here to stay, right? But they like growth opportunities. They like to feel like they're invested. They like to feel like they have a part to, some say, gone are the days. I know when I was younger, children are to be what? Seen and not heard. But when we nurtured our children, we didn't do that. We told them you could do anything you want, you could be whoever you want to be. Try it, and we provided the opportunities, and that's who's coming into the workforce. The supermen and superwomen who were told from they were young that they could be whatever they want to be, they can do whatever, they could conquer the world. And then they come into your organization and the culture says, Screech, where you going? We cannot retain them like that. That's how we lose them. They're innovative, they're bright, they're thinkers. They want to be a part of something big. But if we don't provide the opportunities for them to do that, we see their coats going out the door. We also have to provide we have to look at strategic partnerships. I was watching last night a show on, I think it was ZNS, and the Minister of Labor was on. She was talking about how we have to make sure that people are being shadowed when we bring in expats, that there's a shadowing going on. And that's very important because our industry, nationally, that bodes well for us, right? Something I mentioned at the boot camp yesterday. We need to be promoting a second language. We need to be promoting that these are the areas that we need to focus on to get our people where they need to be. Yes, we always need external help, and we always will. Let's keep it real. We always will. But how about this? What happened to those exchange programs? If we're bringing in one person, 2 people, 3 people from our head offices from abroad, can we not send one Bahamian? Invest in sending one person? Let's work together on that. Because that's the continuity of our industry. And we need to invest in the younger people because they are the future of our nation and industry. And so we have to look at how do we strategically partner, even with UB. And I know some companies now have a lot of apprenticeship programs, but for those that don't, when you sit around the table and think about your budgets, how difficult would it be to carve something in there to ensure the continuity through those strategic partnerships? Final thought. Simple word. Listen, listen, listen. I saw a quote somewhere. Listen, learn, and then lead. Because there's no one size fit all. We have to listen more than with these, but we also listen with this. What are our people saying? Because, see, acquisition is one part of the equation. We want to retain the best talent for the organization, the best talent to ensure that the growth of the industry is sustained. And of course, we have to be more than myopic. We cannot have a myopic view. We have to have this view about how do we advance people for the good of our nation. And so we have to listen to the cues. What is our brand telling us? What is our turnover rate telling us? What are the people that are coming in and quietly quitting telling us? We have to listen. And so my final thought is this. My final word to you is this. Talent acquisition, talent retention, talent development, leveraging the talent. Is more about how we nurture who we have, how we groom who we have, how we develop who we have, how much we invest in them, and how much we care. How much we care. How much we genuinely care. Leadership is what I speak about. That's what's passionate. That's my passion. But if we are just bankers, financial specialists, to the detriment of people and how we develop people. You know, of all my mother's children, I love myself the best, that kind of attitude. We do the industry a disservice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Patrice, for your invigorating presentation. I'm sure all of us have been encouraged by what Patrice had to say to us today. For me, I was always mesmerized by her presentations. And so she is somebody who brings a lot of value to HR and to our business as a whole. And so, Patrice, today, I'm going to thank you on two fronts. Firstly, you've sponsored us as well, and so you are a sponsor for this conference. And secondly, you've invested a whole lot of time into preparing for making this presentation to us today. And so on behalf of AIBT, thank you for taking the time to spend the morning with us, not only today, but yesterday as well. So we appreciate all that you do and all that you continue to do for the business.
Thank you. Thank you very much.